This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers.
Joined now by the outstanding Mark Brennan, 247 Sports. Mark, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, great to be here, Steve. Obviously, you know, a little bit of a big week here for Penn State football, so happy to be here to talk about it.
Little of a big week, no question. So you watched the game the other night. In fact, you were on the field at the end. You saw Beau Pribula step in. What was your impression of what he did in that spot?
Well, you know, first of all, we don't have to look back too long, to maybe to 2021, to realize that a coaching staff can have all the faith in the world in a backup quarterback. And the quarterback could have faith in himself. But until they actually do it in the heat of a moment, in front of a crowd, you don't know what's going to happen. And I don't mean to be negative toward Taquan Roberson at Iowa a few years ago, but it's a different thing getting it done in practice than getting it done in a hostile environment when you're pressed into action. And I think that's what we learned about Beau Pribula. Listen, I think we all had a pretty good feel for what he brought to the table. You know, not exactly the same kind of quarterback as Drew Aller, you know, different skill set, but very great competitor in high school down in the York area, a winner, a proven winner at that level. But did we know that he was going to be able to do it? Did he know? I bet he thought he knew. And did the coaching staff know? Now I think we all know that that moment was not too big for him and that he's capable of doing it. And, Steve, I would argue, and I don't even think it's an argument, they have to feel so much better, and fans should feel so much better about Penn State's quarterback situation now. You never want a guy to get banged up on any team. But the way that happened with Pribula being able to play an entire half, I just thought that was gigantic for that position and for this team. And one other thing, I know I'm going on, but I love the way that Andy Kotelnecki adjusted his game plan. He didn't throw it out the window. He geared it toward the strengths of Beau Pribula and was able to use all the weapons around Beau to make that transition into being the first teamer that much smoother. So just very super impressed. And then the way the kid handled himself after the game, I know you're not surprised. I'm not surprised because I talked to him before. But, you know, the way he's handled himself as a backup quarterback in this day and age of NIL when people don't want to wait their turn, wow. I mean, he handled himself terrifically.
Yeah, because that's the way he is. That's his nature. And I was on a show in Columbus today, and they asked me about this. And I said, look, Andy Kotelnecki is not one of those square peg, round hole guys. I mean, he looks at somebody and says, okay, what can he do and what really he can't do? And that's what he does with his guys. So he's not a one-size-fits-all guy.
Right, and Steve, the thing is, if you go back and look at him, whether it was Buffalo or whether it was Kansas, and this is what I think makes him a great college coach. And I'm not joking with that. I mean, I think he's a great college coach from what I've seen of him so far and what I've seen him in the past. You know, in college, you're not able to go out and draft the sort of quarterback that you want. Yeah, I mean, you can recruit the kind of quarterbacks you want, but you're not always going to be able to get them, especially when you're at Buffalo. So you may get, you know, a running quarterback. You may get a pure drop-back quarterback. He's been able to gear his offense around any kind of quarterback that they've had. And to me, that's the sign of an outstanding coach. As you said, the whole round peg, square hole thing, he is not trying to fit people into his system. He's molding his system around the people.
Right. And there's another part, too, is the way Penn State's attacked on first down. I don't think people realize this I realize I do keep my own numbers, so that's part of the reason I can say this. Penn State is within 17 yards. They're within 17 yards on first down of the total offense that teams have had against the Penn State defense this year. I mean, that's kind of a remarkable number.
Steve, I think the number was, and you probably know it, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think they ran 30 first-down plays against Wisconsin and averaged about 8 yards per play. Right. I mean, that's insane. I mean, and to me, I mean, you can look at that two ways.
Which is what
number
Mark.
One, that's amazing. Number two, they should have scored way more than 21 points on offense.
They're averaging for the season 8.2 yards per play on first down.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Crazy. And listen, that's the kind of stat that you usually see like 2 games into the season when a team's played nobody. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now you're seeing this, and it's like, so, hey, James Franklin wanted to, what was missing last year? The big plays. He wanted to go out and find somebody who was going to be able to generate big plays, and they've done it. But, the other thing I liked about that game, Steve, is when the game – Penn State, when it needed to grind out the clock and end that game in the fourth quarter, he did not mind handing the ball off to Katron Allen, and just having your toughest, most physical runner, and that's not a knock on Singleton because he's tough and physical too, and rely on that offensive line and just beat the Wisconsin defense into submission. So you have both sides of it. You have big plays, but then you also are able, and we've seen this with Penn State at times in games, right, over the last however many years, those last 4 minutes when they need to put a game away, struggling to do it. And I think they're better equipped to do it now because of the diversity of the offense.
And Tyler Warren, right? You've watched him grow and mature, and you've talked to him often. What are we seeing with him? And what are your observations of that?
Yeah, what I would say, Steve, is, and you know this, I don't know that all the fans know it. I think more fans know it now, but he was a high school quarterback. Right. And so that comes into play, and I think James made a really good point a couple of weeks ago that, simple things like taking a snap, that may seem simple because quarterbacks do it all the time, or handing the ball off. That may seem simple, but if you never did it and went out there and tried to do it, that's a challenge. I mean, but it goes beyond that. I think the fact that he was a high school quarterback, he did not develop bad tight end habits. What do we know about so many high school tight ends is that they're glorified receivers. James Franklin always likes to say they never stuck their hand in the dirt. They're bigger than everybody, and they just use them as big receivers, and they're not challenged. You have a guy like Ty Warren, and he comes in here, and they're able to mold him. And he was able to redshirt that first year, and they were able to mold him into what a tight end needs to be. And I think one of the more underrated coaches, I shouldn't even say that because I'm really high on his coaching staff, but the job Ty Howell has done. I mean, you just look at what they've done tight end-wise the last few years, and he's not just producing tight ends who generate stats. You could look at Ty Warren and say, listen, however many catches he has, I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but I do have the numbers here in front of me. Yeah, 47 catches, 559 yards, 4 touchdowns. Yep. That's all great. And that's what's going to get him first-team All-Big Ten honors. But that's not the only thing NFL scouts and college coaches are looking at. This guy goes in there and does the dirty work, too. Watch the game closely. And then the other thing about Ty Warren, 17 catches against USC, Steve. I think he had 1 catch in the final quarter and overtime. That's not a knock on Ty Warren. What's that telling you? That's telling you that USC adjusted to him. Yep. And then what happens, right? Sure. Then Trey Wallace catches a pass. Then Julian Fleming catches 2 passes on 4th down. Then Nick Singleton catches the ball out of the backfield and scores the tying touchdown. So, and then after the game, what does Ty Warren want to talk about? Everybody else. Most prolific game by a tight end ever. And he wants to talk about the job that the quarterback did, that Julian Fleming did, that everybody else did. And it's funny because I sent somebody who I respect a lot, a coach, the video of Ty Warren addressing the media after that game. And he's almost too humble, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. But in this day and age, when you look at people, all they're trying to do is get SportsCenter clips. This guy all he did was give all the credit to everybody else. And it's genuine. It's completely genuine. So, again, I know I'm going off, but you asked about him as a player, and he's a special player to me. Penn State's had some great tight ends, but I think he's right up there.
What has stuck out to you about the Penn State defense, and why have they been, for the most part, really effective?
I think, and can I take that a step further? To me, I thought last year one of the great things about the Penn State defense, besides being technically sound and athletic and fast, was the aggression and the attitude and the swagger that it played with. And I think that Tom Allen has been able to continue that. So you have great athletes, you have great players, but you need that attitude. And I think the guy who personifies that to me is Jalen Reed. I mean, again, we watch a lot of Penn State football. I'm sure you watch more than I do, watching tape and at practice and whatnot. But when he was creeping up to the line when he eventually got the interception, I knew what was going to happen because they were accounting for him blitzing because he's such a good blitzer. And he's so smart, and Tom Allen's smart enough that they faked the blitz and he dropped back and intercepted the pass. And it's like we're sitting there in the press box and you could see it unfolding. But it's just that kind of, to me, that personifies everything. That here's a guy who will play wherever the team wants him. You know, they wanted to play him more at the line position, but you get KJ Winston injured. Okay, I'm going back and playing safety. And then Day Lane comes along and starts playing better. Okay, they're going to move him back up and play some more line. He'll blitz. He'll tackle people. He'll drop back into coverage. He has that attitude. But the thing that I would add, Steve, is that I think what's setting this team apart from last year is that attitude has carried over onto offense. I think you're seeing a lot of players playing with that same attitude, that same we're not going to lose, that same swagger, that same level of confidence, that when they get behind, there is no measure of panic whatsoever. If it's fourth and whatever at USC, no measure of panic. Everybody's cool, calm, and collected. And that's why I said I wanted to take it a little bit of a step further, because the attitude and all that were there on offense or on defense last year. I think that's carried over to offense, and it's because of some of the strong leaders, the Nick Dawkinses, the Tyler Warrens, the Drew Allers, the Beau Pribula, who's a strong leader despite not being a starter. I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but I think that's been a real key for this team.
We've talked about Andy Kotelnecki. I want to talk about Tom Allen for a moment. There was a period of about 8 to 8.5 months where there was a certain way that Tom Allen wanted to play because of his personnel. And then 5 quarters into the season, they lost KJ Winston. They had to then adapt personnel-wise and stylistically, in some cases, how they needed to play. What does that say about Allen, the defensive coaches, and the players, the way they've adapted?
Well, it tells you that he coached at Indiana, and if he was making changes there with the limited personnel that they had on defense, he obviously knows what he's doing. But I go back to what I said about Jay Reed, is that guys are willing to do whatever it takes. So if that's Abdul Carter rushing off the edge, great. If that's Abdul Carter dropping in a zone blitz, great. If that's Abdul Carter lining up over the nose tackle, standing up, great. If that's them going into the old prowler package with Denai Dennis Sutton lined up as a tackle, great. If that's, whatever, Cam Miller moving up into the line, great. There's no ego, there's no attitude. If that's Dom DeLuca starting, great. If Dom DeLuca's not starting, doesn't care. I'm going to go out there when my number is called. I'm going to do what I need to do. And that, to me, that is a reflection. You've got to know Tom Allen. And what stands out to you about him? Obviously a super intelligent guy, but a super humble guy, right? Yeah. And I think when you see that in a coach, and that he's willing to do whatever it takes. And listen, how about Tom Allen? That may not have been the easiest thing for him to decide to go from being on the sideline to up in the box. A coach with a lot of attitude or a lot of ego may not have been willing to do that in the middle of a season, but he did. Hey, what's best for the team? I'm going to go do it. And the other thing I like, Steve, about Tom, and I see it when I'm at practice, I'm sure you see it even more, the responsibility that he's given Dan Connor. I mean, number one, Dan Connor is now talking to Kobe King in the headset or whoever the Mike linebacker is. Imagine having that guy, we covered Dan Connor. And, was there a more cerebral linebacker that they've had? And they've had some cerebral linebackers, but he's right up there in being super smart. But then you see him out on the practice field, and Tom lets Dan take them through so many of those drills. And you could see that the players are kind of laser focused. And, I mention that because, again, Tom Allen, he's not worried that the media are there and seeing Dan Connor coach everybody up. He's worried about his team being better. And you know what else he's worried about? Making Dan Connor a better coach. And I think that says a lot about the man.
Mark, always outstanding. Appreciate any time I get to spend with you. Thanks so much for being with us.
I appreciate it. Keep doing a great job with Jack.
Okay, thanks. Mark Brennan, see ya. Mark Brennan, 247 Sports.